Good evening, everybody. This is a bit of a controversial subject. I like the subject, and there's no one shoe fits all with this. But we're going to discuss warm-ups, ramp warm-up, as they call it. You can call it activation. I prefer the word activation. But let's get into it. So why warm up? Well, reduce the chance of injury, improve performance, increase muscle temperature, increase core temperature, and disrupt temporary adhesions. Well, when I was an athlete, I didn't know any of that stuff. And this is me here stretching. So I statically stretched and ran fairly fast. And now I know better as a coach. I'm thinking, well, geez, what would I run? Because, you know, I could do this. I was telling Shani earlier, I could do the splits standing up on a wall. So I was always pulling my hamstrings because I was hypermobile. So it wasn't a good thing, and I ran faster when I started to get tighter. So traditionally, what is a warm-up? A warm-up for sport is a series of activities undertaken in preparation for low or high intensity work. And it focused on two aspects: physical and mental preparation. Modern principles, a warm-up in sport is a series of activities, exercises undertaken in preparation, again, for the same thing, but we now focus on four main aspects, being mental readiness, physical readiness, injury prevention, and performance enhancement. Makes sense. What's the effects of efficient warm-up? Well, faster muscle contractions for one, due to relaxation of antagonist and agonist muscles. Obviously, if we've got a tight muscle, we must have another one that's relaxing. So when we run, if the hamstring's under tension, the quad is usually relaxed. So they work antagonist, agonist. But the better we can relax and get them to work together, the faster we can get muscle contractions, the faster we can move. Increased reaction time, improvements in muscle strength and power, lowered viscous resistance in muscles. If we think about that, this is why people use rollers, I suppose, but that's another subject, a huge subject. Improved oxygen delivery due to raised temperature, blood temperature. Very interesting. I was discussing this earlier with Shani, and the Bohr effect is about oxygen release within the blood, and it's proven that if we raise the blood temperature, it can carry more oxygen. So we were talking about Johnny come lately, the athlete that always turns up late for training. We all got one, we know, we all have a few. Turns up late for training, doesn't warm up effectively. He's not really warm enough because he's done it in a rush, so he gets a head sweat, thinks he's warm, joins in on, let's say, 3 times 150. First set, he's rocking it, no problem. Comes the second set, does the first one, and then he blows up with lactic acid. Right? Could it be that it's the Bohr effect? Could it be that he's not actually hot enough internally, core temperature, and so his body's not enhancing this metabolic reaction, so optimizing waste maintenance, how he gets rid of waste as we produce it, because the body's very efficient at doing that, unless we really overdo training, but it can do it. If we're not warm enough starting the session, we cannot. Those last two aspects there, we're going to be off it. So Johnny come lately then doesn't finish the session, goes home, doesn't warm down properly, because if he hasn't got the ability to warm up properly, he's not going to warm down properly. He goes home, next day he's sore, comes to training late again. So this is the athlete that, these are the people that never improve. These are the people that waste your time, talking from experience. They waste your time, and these are the people that underperform and point the finger at you. So I think maybe they need a little bit of, it's not that they're bad athletes, I think they need educating. So they need to understand why we warm up and how we warm up. Warm-up procedures commonly last 30 to 40 minutes, meaning all content must be factored in this time frame. Is this good? Shockingly, I just ran these statistics today I went through this with Shani today. So in 8 months, we would do 240 hours of training as a coach. And this is based on 5 days a week. Most coaches, a lot of you are doing 6 days a week. So let's say 5 days a week, 240 hours. Warm-up time, 80 hours of warm-up time. Warm down time, whoa! So we put that warm down time in there as well. This is a lot of hours spent warming up and warming down. 33% of the time spent on the track is warm up. And this demonstrates why warm up cannot be something that we just say, right guys, go and warm up. I think we have to coach it, and it should be part of the session, because if we utilize that strategically, we're getting an extra 80 hours pre-comp between winter and competition of skill work, core work, mobility work, flexibility, power work. All of this can be combined in a warm-up. So that 33% is a huge number. It's a massive number. So ramp warm-up really is it's a protocol. It's a protocol that I use for making sure that my athletes are ready to go. So what does it stand for? Well, raise, activate, mobilize, potentiate. So raise, phase 1 would be body temperature, raise your body temperature, and you can do that anyhow you like, because it's not the total warm-up. Raising the body temperature is only part of it, and it should not be jog, stride, train. There's a lot more to it than that. So we want to raise the heart rate, raise the respiration rate, lungs, increase blood flow, and joint viscosity. So we want the fluids running around. Or we want to be well oiled, if you like, well oiled. So how do we do that? Well, very simple drills, and this is not exhaustive. This is just part of it. A skips, B skips, straight leg drills, ankle work. There's lots more that can be incorporated in this. Squatting, lunging, crawling drills. These exercises, this sheet on this page is what I used at Brunel. I have loads of different sheets, but I was coaching 30 athletes, okay? So this is my way of controlling the quality and the quantity of what was going on in the warm-up with so many athletes. And so I knew when I said, right, we're ready to go at this time, I knew if they've gone through this, I know the state of what I've got to deal with, what they can then do, having done this. And also, I have the ability then I can stand back and look at how they do this stuff. And I can tweak it. I can say, well, so-and-so needs to do more of that, because I could see, you know, on exercise 4, they were dropping their hips because they've got a core weakness. So it will show you things. Just a prisoner squat, if you watch someone do a prisoner squat, will tell you a lot, because a prisoner squat or just a normal squat, low squat, full squat, will determine how deep they can go, will determine how they come out the block. So if they can't get into a squat with their feet flat on the floor, they're going to pop up out the blocks. So it's important that we identify that person A has got a tight posterior chain. They're tight in their calves. If they're tight in their calves, there's no way they're going to come out of the blocks low. So these kind of exercises will identify weaknesses and areas you can work on. Phase 2, activate. The A, activate and mobilize. So we're activating major muscle groups and mobilizing key joints, working through range of motion. So now we start to pick up, and these exercises, you can see from my sheet, they're done fairly quickly. These are not new exercises. None of this stuff is new, and people can say it's old school. Maybe I'm old, but it works. I don't care, and I don't like the word old school. It's effective. And I pinched a lot of this from Dan Pfaff and Lauren Seagrave, a lot of it, and I've used it extensively, and it works. That's all I care about. It works. So you can incorporate mini band routines, balance work, squats, lunges, spinal mobility, which is this stuff down here, in your workout, in these warm-ups. And I can tell you, I put people through this on the RCL work that we do, the regional squad stuff, and this is a workout. People are quite shocked when you make them do this properly. And it can be scripted to be a session. That's just about reps and sets and tempo. Easily done. But I think if you look at some of the things in here, totally get you ready for action, which is what we want. So also with how I've worked this is I screen athletes. Working at Brunel, I would screen them every 4 weeks. And we'd be doing med ball toss, standing long, sergeant jump, all the usual testing procedure. But this is something that I would religiously do every 4 weeks. It gives them a rest. I get something out of that. They recover. They think they're resting, but I'm making them play basketball and other stuff. So I'm still getting an active rest. But it also gives me a chance to screen the athletes in their rest test week and identify imbalances and power leakages, right? So if I've got an athlete that I know that, you know, if a male sprinter is producing 265 on a standing long, there's something wrong, right? Because I want that over 3 meters. There's something wrong. Is it technical in their ability to actually do it technically well, or is it just lack of strength, in relative strength in the right areas? So it could be power problem, but doing testing and then incorporating what you found out into your warm-up, well, now you'll get another 80 hours of work done, aren't you, in 8 months? So thought must be given to fundamental movements and demands of the event. Opportunities are massive for range of motion and specific work on joints. So there's a lot to be said to just letting people just jog warm up. You are wasting your time here. Well, 80 hours between October and May, 80 hours minimum. I've done that on 5 days. A lot of you doing 6 days a week. Any questions? I'm going to stop right there, and on this side here. Yeah, the science of cool down. I mean, it is just as important. I'm going to say a piece about that in a minute, but yes, it's just as important. It's absolutely just as important. And I think there's a lot of misconception and misunderstanding about rollers and rolling and using stuff like that to influence warm-up. And I think that warm-up is warm-up. And I think it should be scripted. How do you identify power leakages? Well, if you put someone in a lunge position with a med ball, and it could be quite a heavy med ball, you're going to see, you might see a bend, you might see a flexion in the spine in the wrong place. You might see they might not be able to hold a lunge position, or if you make someone do a drive out, and they've got a bend in their back, that's the power leakage, right? So they've got a core problem that needs to be addressed. Let's say, gosh, there's loads of things you could look at. Power leak. When we talk about power leakage, we're talking about really about coming out of the blocks is where we really look for this kind of leakage is coming out of blocks. And it's usually down to range of motion, lack of power, or power transfer, how they transfer power, and force application. And you can easily identify that through doing certain exercises in your warm-up. Yeah, they could be doing this stuff in isolation. I would just say that just make sure they understand that warm-up is not, because you're given a warm-up, specific warm-up, extended, it's not a day off, it's still training. If you can get them in the mindset that warm-up is part of the training session all the time, you are going to gain so much extra skill work, because all those drills that I see kids doing that are done badly, when they get to 18, because I've had this with 95 athletes I've coached at Brunel, I have to move them back before I can move forwards, because their warm-up has not been strict enough on how they do their drills. So we have to move them backwards first, which is a shame. So it's a massive opportunity to improve and fine-tune. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I would. This is what I see a lot, is athletes just going through the motions on warm-up, and then they feel, well, warm-up is just, and it's just a bad habit from jogging when they were kids, just jogging and going into a session, which you'd get away with. Now you've got an athlete who's 17, 16, 17, starting to put on a bit of muscle. This is serious now. You can't just be doing that. You just can't. They're not going to get where they could got. They might be a pretty good athlete. They won't be as good as they could be. So now we've really got to start to hone in on what can I improve with this athlete, and add it in their warm-up extra. Absolutely. And it could be that dorsiflexion's bad. Well, put them in a sandpit. Make them do pogo jumps. There's so many different things you can do. But I think a scripted sheet, which I use, is one way of controlling that. It's a good intervention. They can talk when they're warming back. I think there's. I don't like mobile phones, and I don't like headsets, and I don't like anybody plugged in when they're warming up or when they're training, because the body has a rhythm, and I want them to be aware of that rhythm, not the music or the talking. So they can talk and have all that stuff when they're walking back and recovering, but when they're doing their work, I don't want to see headsets and music and stuff like that, because it interferes. I think psychologically it's interfere with the rhythm. You want to be aware of your touch. I think that, joint pain with different age range, and that's a massive one. I mean, if you're coaching very young athletes and they're coming into puberty and they've got Osgoods and they've got growing pains, these are just pains, but it's just that now you've got to be more careful on how much force you put through their body. They need force, but you've got to be more aware of rest. And rest is a massive part of training. It's not a day off. It's part of the training program, resting, and even more so with under 15s. It's a massive issue, and the hats off to a lot of you, because a lot of you just coach that, and you're a specialist in that area more than me. But it's not easy. Hats off to people that coach under 15s. It's not easy. Yeah, it's funny, because back in my day, this is a long time ago, I knew if I could jump 3 meters 300, or bound 10 bounds in 30 meters, I know I'm going to run 10.3 or under, because I need that level of power. And there's lots of correlations between those kind of performance tests and 100 meter and the sprint performance that you can look at. If you speak to a lot of performance athletes, sprinters, they will tell you some of these testing things, and you'll find they're all very similar. World-class sprinters are going to be over 3 meters 300 to 3.4. Having said that, I know a couple of ex-shot putters that could also stand in long 3 meters 400. So I'd expect a male what level of male sprinter would expect to stand in 3 meter long jump? 10.3 best, 10.4 around there. Okay, so the phase 3 of the warm-up is potentiation, which is basically taking the body now up into the intensity and the force application that they're going to mimic what they're going to do in the actual session. So this could be extensive, quicker drills into running. This could be med ball toss into a jump, into a sprint. I used to do a lot of that stuff where we would go 3 heavy med ball squat throws, bed jumps or onto a box jump, and a sprint. And then with older athletes, we'd take a barbell out onto track and they would do heavy cleans, 3, 2, 1, and sprint. So I'm activating. I want to load up as much fast twitch fiber as I can through quite heavy, fast work, and then we go into a speed session. So and there's lots of arguments about this. Should you do weights before or after a speed session? And I'll leave that one right there. I know where I think it should be. So stretching, is it good or is it bad? As I said, I ran fairly fast, being able to stretch like a ballet dancer, literally like a ballet dancer, and it is now I know better. So static stretching still has a place, but not in a pre-event warm-up. Any kind of event where you want to move fast and produce, it's not going to help you. It's not, you're pre-stretching a rubber band. Why would you do that? No, I want to stretch it and let it go. So I don't want to pre-stretch it like that way. So static stretching, you can use it not in warm down, but in recovery, part of recovery and flexibility work. But it will reduce your force application and power output massively pre-event, any event, pre-training. Dynamic stretching, on the other hand, is totally different. This is where we are stretching a muscle while it's moving. So leg swings, lunges, even high knee drills. These are all going to stretch in a certain way, but they don't have the same outcome as static stretching at all. So hip circles, high knee pulls, lunges, front side reverse, straight leg march. These are all stretching, but they're not static stretching, and very, very beneficial. How do we plan an effective warm-up? Well, seek first to understand and then be understood. So we need to understand as coaches how to put that together and how it affects the performance, the outcome. And we also then need to make sure that our athletes understand us. So a block speed session would ensure athletes are aware of the session focus, make them aware of what the session is before the session. So diaries, absolutely essential, diaries, so they know what's coming up so they can mentally prepare and self-motivate. Mimic force application of the event in the warm-up. So ladder sprints, power speed work, med ball, chest throw and sprint, that kind of stuff I was talking about. Anything like that where we are lifting a heavy load and then moving it quickly. So it could be a weighted squat jump. We'll do that. Or it could be a heavy squat and then some quick tuck jumps. So we're activating and getting ready to move quickly in the session. Block clearance, well, we want to do things like squat jumps, standing long, single leg jumps onto a mat, all these things where we're actually putting the body through the range of motion with power and speed before we actually go into blocks. So we're getting the body ready to do very quick movements. As a coach, we need to identify the mental, physical and biomechanical demands of the training session or the performance that we're after, and make sure that we put that work, put some of that work, mimic it in the warm-up. Otherwise we get injuries. Simple as that. We're going to get injured. So falling drives, wall cycles, all this type of work can be done at speed, quicker and quicker and quicker. Ladder drills, fantastic. I'm not going to mention overspeed training because it's another subject. So with a ramp, with the whole ramp protocol, why I like it is because it's prescriptive. We can change it as we learn more about our athletes. We can then start to really hone down on, okay, even though I've got a group of athletes, this is the sheet. We can then say, well, athlete A needs to do more of that exercise. So we can make it prescriptive. But it's a great tool because they'll end up with loads of these sheets. I've got quite a few and it makes sense. So the aim short term, the session outcome focused could be just the performance. So it could be that it's a time trial. So then, yeah, we are looking at top end running. Medium term could be performance in the future. Long term is about their physical, mental, athletic development and career. So now we have to, and this is why, if we don't take care of athletes when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, they won't reach their full potential. And this is down to, and it could be down to simple things, just like these 80 hours in 8 months of warm-up that's not scripted or in a protocol. So it's not coached. And I think it needs to be partly coached until you've got an athlete that has a maturity and self-motivation to do it properly. So in designing a ramp protocol warm-up, and there's no right way to do this, just understand that you have to understand what the end game is. Understand the end game. Each element of the warm-up, when you plan it, helps the next element. Simple. So it just contributes to the positive effect of the next element. It's as simple as that. Been there. So high performance is dependent on a balance of 4 types of capacity: technical, tactical, physical, psychological. Warm-ups typically focus on the technical and physical, and the other two things, which is the psychological and the tactical, we develop those with an athlete through training. So let them understand what it takes to win and develop a resilience and an understanding of high performance. Skill. So integrating movement skills in the warm-up is an opportunity to increase the amount, quality and quantity of skill practice. Massively. I mean, until we did those figures and discussed that today, I was like, wow, this is just ridiculous. It's so much time. So athleticism and performance is underpinned by the ability to control the body and movement patterns at speed whilst producing force in the world of fatigue. As simple as that. So the better we can get them in warm-up, and it could be that we make the warm-up a session. It could be, if you look at my sheets, and Shani will put those up in a couple of weeks, those could be, well, you could just simply say, right, 3 times through the sheets, that's a session tonight. It's not easy because it's done at a good tempo. It's not easy work, but it will test an athlete and it will show you their weaknesses for sure. For sure. So reps, this should be based on the fitness and ability of the athlete to do the exercise technically well. So even high knees. I've stopped a group on a regional coach squad weekend. I've watched the athletes for 2 seconds, stopped the whole lot of them, and then got my sheets out of my bag. So you have to be really on this, that warm-up isn't just getting a head sweat. Then athletes need to understand why they're doing an exercise. And I think if you can ask an athlete why they're doing high knees and they don't know, well, that's a problem. So varying the numbers of reps can completely change the focus of that warm-up, but too much could be detrimental to the session outcome. So I've been to championships and I like warm-up. I like the warm-up arena because I like to watch people warming up, and I also like to watch. I find it interesting to watch athletes copy other people's drills because they look good. But if the body is used to doing a certain amount of work as a warm-up, and you suddenly move outside of that, what happens? You're going to ruin the performance. So athletes need to understand, and coaches need to understand why too much could be detrimental to the session unless it's mimicked and practiced in training. So that consider the pace of the warm-up and the intensity always. Some drills need to be done slowly. Some need to be done quicker. Just because we're dealing with sprints doesn't mean that everything's got to be done quick. It doesn't always work like that, especially with core work. Recovery, well, this is just as important as warming up. Warming down has many benefits, and the big one is removing waste products from the muscles. And this is just by gently stop when you stop your exercise to then warm up again slightly. Basically, is what we're doing when we say warm down. We're getting circulation of blood flowing and removing all these waste products. We're reducing the elevated heart rate back to normal rhythm, which is very important. We have to protect the heart and lungs and our organs. And by doing so, we then aid the recovery for the next session. And obviously, if someone has DOMS, muscle soreness, then you need to look at why. And it could be that sometimes that's a forced reaction, but sometimes it shouldn't be there and it is there. Does it stop you training? I'm discussing this with Shani, that I've never missed a training session because I had muscle soreness. You might change the session or the intensity of the session or the work, but you actually miss training because of muscle soreness, because you're actually going to get rid of it quicker by doing some activity. So we had a little discussion as well about what we've seen with warm-ups is that we've seen people warm up for an hour and a half. Is that a good thing? I think that's obsessive. I really do. And I think when you take that, if your body's used to, and you're used to doing a very long warm up, what happens at competition? When you go to major games and you warm up for an hour, you could be 45 minutes in the call room. So you're nearly doing 2 hours work. So you're doing the training session before you race. So you need to just understand. I think that's why protocols are better to work with than just warming up and say, right, I'm ready. I've got a head sweat. I don't think that's the way to go. Right. Questions? No, you see, now you're asking me, Paul, you're asking me a question here. In my opinion, what's the best exercise to increase power for a sprinter? It's force application work, okay? But there's different parts of power. There's different parts of how we use power. We're talking about blocks. Are we talking about power when we actually run? So force application when we run is about ground contact. It's all about, you know, how much force can we put down on the ground in a minimum time. So this is about bounding, mini hurdles, skipping, so many different drills that are going to influence how force application. So power, I don't think it's in the gym, because I don't think you can move quick enough in the gym. So you increase maximum strength in the gym, and there's nothing wrong with gym training, but then I think you need to contrast it with quick movements, because this is about speed and quickness. Tony, brilliant. Skipping in the warm-up, absolutely brilliant. I haven't seen that since I was at Florida State University, but absolutely brilliant exercise. I've also seen, I had a hamstring injury in Florida, and they gave me a scooter to rehab my leg. So this is about thinking outside the box and being very creative with what you're doing. But skipping's fantastic warm-up, really good, because that's all about contact. I think you have to vary it. So could we all work in blocks of 4 to 6 weeks? And I think you should vary the warm up, because then we are slightly shocking the system and giving the athlete and the body new challenge. Absolutely. Wall cycles. Well, basically, I'm just looking at a cyclic action, holding one hand on the wall and doing leg cycles, single leg cycles, and this can be done with a slight contact on the ground. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to, with the wall cycles, with this stuff, I think it's in my sheets, but I'll have to get some video to Shani to show you. Well, yeah, you know, warming up should be a condition on its own. If you look at my sheet, it came from Lauren Seagrave stuff. A lot of those exercises, and obviously he took them from somewhere else, you know. But it's how you put together. There's nothing wrong with taking from a coach. Understand. I know Lawrence, I've been able to discuss it with him, but understand the exercise before you prescribe it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, yes, some warm-ups can be very challenging, and that's good. That's a good thing. So now you're getting half an hour warm-up plus a session. Fantastic. I think this education is a real problem with parents that are helping out at clubs and coaching. the young and talented, and it is an area that, you know, we have to try and get down there with some of the performance coaches and say, look, this is what influences what we get at the end. So what I was getting coming to uni at 18 was totally dependent on what's done in the club environment, and it started at a very young age, because with very young kids, they will drill all day. So why not then? So why not? Skill work all day long. They're not going to get tired, but you can make a massive difference to what the outcome is at 18. Okay, if you've only got 3 hours a week, then you just have to thin it down slightly, but look at the fundamentals of what you're after in sprints. And because as far as I'm concerned, take jogging out. Just take the jogging out and make the kids, get them skipping ropes. I just think that they can do crawling. There's so many other things that are going to do that are going to benefit their development, rather than jogging, which has no benefit to their development. So I just think there's lots more you can do, and it's just thinking outside the box a minute. There's lots of different things. I'd rather you gave them a ball and let them play some football, because we're getting some cross-directional work done, multi-directional. That's better than jogging around the track. How long is a consolidation period when plateaued at a new performance level before raising the wall again? Okay. So when I was talking about my rest period, which I insisted on at university, 2 reasons for having a rest period was that I wanted them to be able to refocus on why they're at uni, but also I want that overcompensation from having a rest. So if you're on it all the time, no, you've got rest has got to be part of your plan, as warm-ups have to be part of your plan, and warm downs part of your plan. So that consolidation period, for me, it was a week. It gave me a time as a coach to look at what I'm doing and look at what they're doing. Plyometrics. Do I see plyometrics as a winter exercise? No. Plyometrics, if sprinting as an action, is plyometric. But the extra plyometric work has to be done year round. We're sprinters, and there's no point of the year where we should be moving slowly. So yeah, absolutely. Do I view A and B runs for mechanical practice, developing stiffness or specific range of movement? I think A and B skips, as they call them, they have a place. They're not going to. I know people that do this very well, but it doesn't mean they're going to run fast just because they can do a really good A run or a B run. I want to see you sprint. Right? So at the end of the day, you've got to sprint. There's some people out there, you see them all the time at competitions, are fantastic drills, and then they run like a donkey. And I just think that there's got to be a point where I think once you've mastered a drill, there is no point in still doing it to the same amount. You need to move on to something else, because that becomes ingrained anyway as a skill. You've acquired that skill, then you don't need to keep on doing it the same amount as you would with a young athlete. And it will develop. It will help you develop stiffness and all these other things. But I think you have to. That has to be worked as part of a core, the whole core development as well. Because again, if these simple drills are not done properly, when you start to produce power with an athlete and strength and speed strength, you're then going to get leakage. So it has to be worked with a strong core. Yes, okay. So yeah, that's for Shani. Okay, I think that is a really good one. That's going to be a really interesting one. Is to discuss younger athletes and what we're looking for at performance level. What can be done at a low level to influence what comes out the top of the tree? Absolutely. Thank you, Carl. Yeah. So, Alan, how are you doing? Yes, I totally understand. Totally understand. And this is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm coming from a performance background, but I'm trying to show that, like, if you look at my sheets, which are taken from Lauren, there's stuff in there that maybe you wouldn't give a young athlete, but then that's for the coach to decide. The development of the athletes, are they ready for this type of work? Do I need to simplify it? Steve, absolutely right. So what I've been saying about prescriptive warm-up protocols is that they have a guide. Even if they forget some of it in competition, some of it's going to stick, and it takes the stress out of pre-comp. Absolutely important that they don't have to think about it. This is something they've been doing in training all the time. They go away to compete abroad. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't have to worry about it. They just get on with it. Thank you very much, Steve. So I can't look at the whole year because the year's kind of short. If we talk about a rest, how many rest periods in a year? I'm resting my athletes. They got used to starting off in October at uni, and they knew every 4 weeks they work this butts off because they know the fourth week is an easy week, test week. And all I'd make them do, they play basketball for 40 minutes, which told me a lot. Heart and lungs, cross-directional work, fantastic. And they'd have to do lots of testing with me. So every 4 weeks I'll be doing a, they'd have some kind of rest. In competition, that's different. That's totally different because I've played around with some athletes, and this is another discussion. Some athletes need 3 days off before competition. Some athletes can go out, do a full warm-up the day before, full warm-up and some heavy weights and compete like gods. It's different for everybody, that, I think. And that's the coach athlete, but you have to work out what's best for each athlete because they're all different, slightly different once you get into competition. Yeah, 80% of players' works are done in the potentiation phase, right? In the last phase, where we are now, absolutely right, Alan, where we're now looking at, we want it to be quick and powerful. It's all about force application, and it doesn't have to be a hell of a lot, but you would do that in the last phase, in the phase 3, the potentiation phase of the warm-up. Absolutely. So some of the tests I do, I've actually got a testing sheet. Actually, I'll give a test sheet to Shani's because I was coaching so many athletes. I mean, at one stage we'd start October with 40, 1 year 50 sprinters. So I have to use protocols like this to control, and I insisted on taking a diary because I can't keep all those times in my head. So this is what I would do, and they would write down. They'd write down their weight. You'd be amazed at what you can get, the information that builds up over a couple of years if you start off with a new athlete in the right vein. So some of the tests that we would do would be 3K shot put, overhead toss, forward toss, standing long, sergeant jump, 300-meter time trial, 500-meter time trial, flying 30, and 30 meters from blocks. Well, I'm done. Shani, are you there? Any more questions?
I saw some of the comments early doors about the 80 hours, and
Yeah.
a few coaches worried about being targeted at elite level versus club level, and I did kind of a little bit of math myself. So, if you're training 3 times a week, that same 30-minute warm up, hopefully that time period, that's 1.5 hours a week, which still equates to 53 hours of warm up. It doesn't get much better.
It's shocking, yeah.
53 hours, and then you have an additional 239 hours of training time if you train for about 1.5 hours, 3 times a week. So regardless of how many times you train, it's just 1/3 of that time, if not more, in warm-up. And I think it's fantastic that you've highlighted how important it is to make that part of your training. So you're still working the systems, working the movement, working the shaping that you need for the training that is about to happen, for the event that you're training for. So it's even though some of the stuff that you've discussed is examples to do with regional and higher athletes, it can all be filtered down and applied to club level athletes, beginning level athletes, training age 1 to 2. Everybody this all applies, and it can all be, it feels about like that comment you made about Laurie, you've already filtered it.
Yeah, I know Scott would have covered a lot of this. Scott would have covered this in Athletics 365. So we can look at that as well. It is different for very young athletes. I understand that. And the other thing with young athletes is you've got to keep them engaged and interested in the stuff. So you don't want it to be too much like training, and it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't need to be.
There was one more question that I didn't post, but it's asked, how are you interacting with your athletes during COVID-19? And that came from Malcolm Comer.
All we can do is WhatsApp and phone calls and email. Athletes don't like email. They don't like it. So it's, you know, it's the same for everybody. And I think that if your athletes have an inch of motivation, self-motivation, they will keep going. And Shani's presentation is gold dust, because that's about retaining fitness, and you can work the energy systems with the circuit. So no one has an excuse. Take the information and use it, because that's gold dust.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we wanted to mention, we were chatting about earlier, was the ability, whether you are going for the English schools for the first time, or whether you're going for the Olympic Games, anything in between, that warm up and that call room. I was giving the example. I remember at the beginning of my career, like
we've done it,
30 minutes, then it was 35, and then 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember Clarence saying, boy, this, I can't remember which, I think it was Commonwealth Games. He's like, 45 minutes, ridiculous. I had to learn to condense my training from standstill cold to absolutely on the gas, ready to fly at my maximum speed in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Absolutely no longer.
I'll tell you why, because it's funny, because I know some athletes, I hear them talking about race warm-up. How many times in training are you going to do a race warm-up? And this is what I'm saying, if we're doing 80 hours of warm-up to get to the season, and you're not doing a race warm-up in 80 hours, so your warm-up should be a damn warm-up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And especially when dealing with younger athletes, we were talking about just them being young, and it's a bit kind of lackadaisical approach, especially when their personal coach is not there.
Yeah.
If you've got an athlete who's gone away with their club, or they're off to the English schools or anything like that, London schools, whichever county schools, a ramp warm-up that one's going to keep them entertained.
Yeah.
They're doing something, they're constantly moving, constantly changing, to keep them focused,
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, this is what I'm about to do. Okay, this, I know this gets my feet moving fast. This gets my body moving. Now I'm really hot. They understand it rather than just on lying down. Let's get your leg up, stretch. I'm still stretching my hamstring. 5 minutes later, I'm still stretching my hamstring and I'm chatting. And then all their blood is just pooling and and they need to move fast and sharp. And it's like, oh, why didn't that happen?
This is why, I mean, you were saying, Shani, that, you know, Donovan, you know, we all, like a lot of coaches saying, these damn rollers are getting in the way. Everybody wants to roll and roll and roll, you know. So people come away from going to physios all the time to get warmed up, and now everybody's on a roller.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to release.
With headphones on.
It's the buzzwords now. The buzzwords now, but you can't get away from an effective planned warm up.
Absolutely. The faster you get there, the more energy you have for your performance.
Yeah.
It's the aim, and I know I keep banging on about it, but also the objective is to go through rounds. So the more effective your warm up is,
Well, yeah.
Next round, regardless of whether it's any level where you have rounds, your warm up needs to be more and more effective as you get, because you're getting hotter, especially if it's the same day. You don't need to do as much warm up each time you are going to the next level.
Yeah.
You don't know.
You know, because I tell you what, when I did that England USA match indoors at Cosford a long time ago, I didn't have a walk before that last run where I took the British record. I didn't warm up. I came off the physio bed with a tight back, and I ran straight on the track.
You're ready to run.
It's further debate. I can see stuff coming up there. It's such an interesting debate. But I think that science is right on this one. Science is really right on this one, and I think that by doing a good warm up in training, you are just increasing your ability to do work rate. Because as you said, you come to major games, 4 rounds, 4 warm ups, 4 rounds.
Absolutely. Regardless of the standard, you have
to get them ready. Really getting ready for that, yeah.
So looking at the maths of it, because I like to be objective about these things. If you're athletes, and I have known of some athletes take an hour and 15, hour and a half to warm up.
Race.
That's before they even go in the call room. So let's say hour and 15. I know of hour and 15 minutes by the time they finish rolling.
They're scared.
15 minutes. Then 45 minutes in the call up. That's 2 hours of either trying to keep yourself warm or have been actively trying to warm up before you even begin to.
Right. So they've actually taken out of their bank. They've taken out of their bank massively.
Yeah. So you're just depleting. It's really tired. Never mind things like indoor competition. Most of those indoor arenas are highly dehydrating. So unless you're like drinking constantly and then trying to do this massive warm up, go in the cool room, cool down, warm up, and then at the end of the day, after you've done this 2 or 3 times, you then are going to expect your body to run the fastest it has done all day. At the end of hours of warm up, it's just something to think about and something to be very, like you said, very prescriptive with. We know your athlete. I'm hypermobile, I'm super bendy in every direction. So making me sit down and stretch for 20 minutes was a bad idea. I'm really tight. So yeah, knowing your athlete.
Absolutely. It's really interesting discussion, and it's also, I think it's just important, or more important for very young athletes, for the under 15s, and I know that is a, my hat's off the coaches that coach that age. It's very difficult to keep them engaged and have a focus, because you haven't got the physicality to see where it's going yet. So it is a different kind of focus, but this is still important because they've got muscle. Still important.
And you're setting them up for the future. So if you teach them the right way from the get-go, like all aspects.
Yeah.
If they know how to be efficient and effective and understand how an exercise impacts their body, then it allows them to make good choices when you're not there. So one of the coaches posted about having that prescriptive approach, so that when you're not there, which is a majority of the time, as an athlete coming up, your personal coach is not necessarily able to travel with you. So if you have a good understanding, oh, I know that I do fast feet drills and that helps my feet move fast.
Well, do you remember when they were indoors? I remember going to Bratislava with the England team, and I remember the two sprinters. Two of them did about 6 drive outs. They were going to run 60, getting ready for 60 meters, England match. They did 6 drive outs, and each one they crossed the finish line. Yeah. And I asked, after they ran terribly, I said,
exhausted.
Is that your normal warm up? Not even close to the normal warm up. They just lost their head. But if it's prescriptive and becomes ingrained, then they're going to do the right thing at the right time. And that was totally the wrong thing.
Yeah. Regardless of the level of competition, that whole aspect of you are in a new arena can really throw people. So if it's being drilled, literally the warm up is part of your session, and you know that you stick to that plan, then you're more likely to get a consistent outcome. You're more likely to so yeah, I don't know what everybody is saying. So yeah, I just think it's something that we as coaches need to be really, we have to spend time on it. We can't just leave them to it and then say, well, we've spent the first few weeks of the winter teaching them their warm up. Of course, they're going to keep it going exactly as we left them.
And the thing is, Johnny, in a year, if we look at the whole year from October through to end of August, it's 120 hours of warm up, at least.
It's a lot of time.
We need to know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And like you said, changing it, varying it, so you keep the interest there.
Yeah.
As I was saying before, shock of the system, even in warm up, it's like, oh wow, yeah, okay, let's make sure we're working the hips this way today, are we? Okay. All of that is important.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody's just said, how long will these webinars be online to access? They are going on Athletics Hub until such time as we change it to something else, and they'll be moved across. So
actually, because as long as you, the coaches, keep logging on, then we'll keep doing it.
Absolutely. So the more we sign up for these things, the more we support them, the more England Athletics will put them on, because they're happy with how everything's going. So thank you very much for everybody who's been signing in, signing up, and participating and asking some fantastic questions today, Harry.
That's good. Thank you very much.
I'm going to switch you back to your presentation now, because I think you had a couple more slides. Let's go.
So yeah, final steps. Well, know your athletes, warts and all. Decide the why warm up. We've discussed that. Decide the how you're going to warm up, and start with the end in mind. So what is the focus? Be creative, and that's a part of coaching. It's not all in a book. Some of it's got to come out your head, and it could be, I used a hell of a lot of resistance band work with athletes, and I love that type of training, and it's just, I find it very creative, and I like the creative side of what we do. And also listen to feedback and adopt a flexible approach. So even though you've written something, you might have to change it. Even though you've printed 10 copies, you might have to change it because of the feedback. And vary your warm-up. So if we work in blocks, then vary it with the blocks. Work it with the blocks. So now you're identifying, now I need to improve this 4-week block, and add it in there. So it could be core stability work in that warm-up, and you want to see a change at the testing phase after 4 weeks. And it's just a way of just controlling more about what you, giving you a bit more joined up thinking and control over what you're doing. I think it really works that way. Right. So the next webinars are Joe McDonald. I'm looking forward to this one, and this is coaching para athletes. It's just coaching, and I've done this myself, and I know what that's about, and that's going to be very interesting to look at Joe. So that's on the 22nd of April. On the 28th, Donna Fraser, full-time Olympian, training for championship performance. That's going to be very interesting and will underpin some of the stuff we've been discussing about what it's like in the big arena and warm-up, which is such a huge focus. 29th of April, Graham Pilkington, he's the RCL for North, front side or backside mechanics. Good subject, looking forward to that one. And also Mike Leonard, RCL Southeast, looking at working the energy systems, how much of each. Very, very good webinars, all of these. So thank you very much for, once again, supporting the work we do. And there's my details. Thank you.